Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of MazzaOnMets. It's our second one of the week, our second of three. We'll obviously be doing another show on Friday after the New York Mets series with the Milwaukee Brewers. And today is the Mets day off edition of MazzaOnMets. Today we will recap their series with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Mets getting swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then we will preview we'll preview their series with the Milwaukee Brewers and look at the pitching matchups and lineups and stuff like that. But today is the Mets actually, and we'll also get into some other news. There was a tweet by the owner. I said on our last show, just yesterday, we did a state of the Mets just to talk and have a talk and see where things are with the Mets right now, as they have currently lost 13 of their last 16. They've now gotten swept by the Pirates. They finished the month of June 3-13. Tomorrow will be July 1st. So they're not hitting well, they're not pitching well, they're not doing they're just on a rough slide right now and struggling. And today, and I said on the show yesterday in our State of the Mets that the owner wasn't happy, and we heard from the owner earlier this morning. So we'll get to Steve Cohen's tweet earlier today, and we'll also get to a report by Andy Martino about the coaching staff and everything like that. So that he reported yesterday, shortly after the game ended yesterday. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But today, obviously, we got to recap the series with the Pirates. You might ask, what's there to recap? Well, there's a lot to recap actually. If we start off on Friday against the Pittsburgh Pirates, things started off well for the team. Top of the first inning, top of the first inning, or actually, no, excuse, actually, no, sorry, let's restart that. Uh, Bottom of the second inning, I think I was thinking of the. Actually, you know what? I was thinking of the next game. I was thinking of the next game, but we'll get to the next game. But David Pearson took them out on Friday. You think, okay, you need to bounce back. Got a little roughed up against the Phillies, and it was against the Phillies. Look, he's been really good and really consistent all season long. He was due for a bit of a bad outing against the Phillies, and they have a great lineup. So you think, okay, he's facing the Pirates offense. He's going to bounce back. And in the first inning, he looked great. First inning, he looked great. It was smooth. I'm pretty sure it was a 7-pitch first inning or so. He got the ground outs and everything. So you thought, okay, this could be a very smooth outing for him. This could be a very good smooth outing for him. He'll give the Mets exactly what they need, and they'll continue their winning ways and win 3 in a row, right? Because they had just had momentum and taken the first 2 games. Taken the next 2 games from the Atlanta Braves and earned a split of that series. But you thought, okay, this will be a good way to continue. Pearson's going to continue this. He's going to pitch well. The Mets will win the game. Well, that didn't happen, of course. In the bottom of the second inning, he walked Joey Bart. Again, things he got Nick Gonzalez to ground out to start the bottom of the second, but he walked Joey Bart. It's always the walks, folks. It's always the walks. It's always the walks. He gave up just a bunch of hard hit balls. The Pirates really hit him hard in this inning. Ke'Bryan Hayes with a hard hit single. Jared Trejo with a hard hit single. Ke'Bryan Hayes a single, 107. I mean, I'll read off the exit velocities. 107.8 on Ke'Bryan Hayes a single. Jared Trullo, 105.6 on his base hit. Then the former Met, Alexander Canario, Jared Trulio's base hit scored a run. He outscored Joey Bart, 1-0 Pirates. Alexander Canario, who the Mets had in spring training, actually did pretty well for them. And of course, the Mets had so much outfield that they couldn't really keep Canario. Although you do like his bat, they acquired him. But he comes in, he rips a double, 107.9 exit velo, 2-0 Pirates. Then IKF, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa comes up. He gets a base hit. He singles in a run, 103.5 exit velo. Again, they were just really, really ripping the ball like crazy on Peterson. Peterson was just leaving a lot of pitches over the middle, not really locating. You could just tell this was after really he cruised through the first inning. So something just clicked. Something just happened. Because he rolled through the first inning. Like I said, I think about 7 or so pitches, but then the second inning, he just got walloped. And he just left so many pitches over the middle. And the Pirates really took advantage of Tommy Pham from the Met. He comes in, he hits into a ground out force out, which scores a run. That scores another run. It's 4-0, and it's 4-0 Pirates right off the bat in the second inning. And I think and I think again, this is where the problems have started with the Mets during this stretch. They get down early in the games, and what's also a bit of a thing. Let's rewind back to the top of the first inning for a second. Let's rewind. And I mentioned in the last show, I mentioned yesterday in the State of the Mets edition, the Mets need to start scoring runs early and getting on the board early and helping your pitching a bit. Now, I'm not saying this one run that they didn't get on the board cost them the game and that it would have prevented Peterson from giving up more than 4 runs. But it's an example of getting on the board early and getting a lead early for your pitching staff and setting a tone. It's all about setting the tone. You have to set the tone, especially when you're a good baseball team and you're facing a team that you should beat, like the Pirates. So Brandon Nimmo, after Francisco Lindor struck out to begin the game against Mitch Keller, Brandon Nimmo gets a base hit. He then steals second. Right there, a runner in scoring position for your big boppers, JuanSoto and PeteAlonso. Right off the bat, you got 2 opportunities with your big boppers to drive around. Again, set the tone. Set the tone. And they don't. And unfortunately, JuanSoto flies out. He flies out to center field. I'm pretty sure he got jammed on that, but he flies out to center field. And PeteAlonso, he strikes out after being up 3. He strikes out swinging on a slider. Alonso again chasing the slider, chasing. That's what Pete's been doing a little bit recently. Again, Pete hasn't been bad as of late, but you've seen a lot of chasing with him lately. Sliders again, fastballs up. That's been Pete's MO throughout his career. He's really hot. When he's hot, he's really hot. But when he's cold, he's swinging and missing and chasing at a lot. Fastballs up and in. That sliders are breaking balls down and away, or even down and in. But bottom line is this: another early opportunity for the Mets to score some runs in the first inning or whatever, and they're not able to capitalize. So what happens when Peterson goes out there in the bottom of the second? He gives up a 4-run lead. It's like, well, you could have been up 1-0 or even 2-0 early, but now you're now 4-0. And Peterson didn't have in the bottom of the second. He gets hit hard. And you're down 4-0 to a team that you should beat right off the bat in a series where you should win. Right off the bat. That set the tone for not only this game, but the entire series. That 4-run bottom of the second, when Peterson got hit hard, that set the tone for the entire series. You just thought maybe for the entire game, but it just set the tone for the entire series and how this series ended up, how this series became, how this series went from the Pirates beating the Mets by a combined score of 30-4. JuanSoto hits a home run in the top of the 4th inning. He continued his hot streak, his hot June. He had one of the best months ever for a New York Met in June. I got the stat actually. I got the stat right here. His overall numbers in June. JuanSoto. He hit JuanSoto his 11th home. He hit his 11th home run in the month of June. JuanSoto, that was his 11th home run in the month of June. That was his 20th of the season, which JuanSoto now leads the team in home runs, which is crazy considering coming into the month he had 9. He had 9 home runs coming into the month, and you didn't, and I think PeteAlonso was well ahead and leading the pack in home runs, and now all of a sudden JuanSoto enters the month of July after an 11 home run month, and he enters the month of July and enters this point of the season now leading the team in home runs. Something again you probably didn't think that would happen, but this was a great month for JuanSoto. 11 home runs. His OPS was well above not just average or above average. It was fantastic. So, again, Soto continued his great month. He continued his great month. He continued to be effective and had his best month or one of the best calendar months of any Met in history. Right here, highest single calendar month OPS in Mets history. He is third. June 2025. JuanSoto is third for a highest calendar month OPS in Mets history for an entire month. JuanSoto had a 1.196 OPS in the month of June. That's only right behind Darryl Strawberry, 1.209 in June 1990. In 1990, Strawberry was incredible. And Mike Piazza, May 2000. Again, 2000, Piazza was incredible, 1.212 OPS that year. So Soto continued his great month with a home run, got the Mets back in the game. But that'd be the only run the Mets would have in this game, as they lost, of course, 9-1. The Pirates in the bottom of the fifth and bottom of the sixth tacked on more runs. One run in the bottom of the fifth, courtesy of a Ke'Bryan Hayes double. Ke'Bryan Hayes had an incredible series. Ke'Bryan Hayes, who had been struggling in the majority of the season, but really had a heck of a series. He doubled in a run after Brian Reynolds doubled to start the game. Brian Reynolds, who has really been hot as of late, he had a great series in this game, in this series. He doubled a wild pitch by Peterson. A lot of wild pitches lately by this Mets pitching. We can call it a wild pitch, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to decide what defines the ball that gets by the catcher, right? It's either wild pitch or a pass ball. Regardless, during this stretch, there has been a lot of that. This happened again here. Wild pitch by David Pearson. Brian Reynolds moved to third. There's been a lot of it, man. Whether it's wild pitches, pass ball, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to define it as in that play, it's happened a lot for the Mets. There's been way too many wild pitches and way too many pass balls that have gone on in these last 16 games. I don't have the exact number on me, but it's got to be a lot because it feels like it's a lot. It feels like almost every game during these last 16, there's been at least one wild pitch or even two wild pitches thrown by Mets pitching or a pass ball by a catcher, whether it's Alvarez, Torrens, Sanger, whoever. It's got to stop. It's got to stop because you can't have these runners advancing. And here, that's what happened. Brian Reynolds advanced to third. Ke'Bryan Hayes drove him in with a base hit. Ke'Bryan Hayes drove him with a base hit 2 batters later. And then right there, Pearson was taken out for Blade Tidwell. So David Peterson looking for a bounce back outing, looking for a bounce back game. He only gave the Mets 4 2/3, 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 walks, struck out 5. His ERA, which was so good a couple of starts ago, is now 3.30. So Blake Tidwell comes to the game. Now, remember, Blake Tidwell was called up for Griffin Canning. Griffin Canning tore his Achilles. He was supposed to start. He's scheduled to start for Griffin Canning in his outing, I believe, this week against Milwaukee Brewers. So he has to come in and pitch out of the bullpen. He was available out of the bullpen. He has to come and pitch. And in the bottom of the sixth, he gives up a base hit to IKF, Isaiah Kyle-Falefa. He walks Tommy Pham. And then he gives up a 3-run homer to Brian Reynolds. It's 8-1. Again, Brian Reynolds had an incredible series. It's 8-1. And he essentially, I'm pretty sure he pitched the rest of the way. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm looking at it now. He pitched the rest of the way, Blade Tidwell. He gives up an RBI single to Tommy Pham, 9-1. So Tidwell finishes his day. He finished the whole game because, again, the Mets needed innings. Their bullpen's tired. They need innings. He goes 3 1/3, 5 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, a strikeout. His ERA, Blake Tidwell, 10.13. 10.13 ERA. The Mets finished the game offensively, the 1 run, Soto homer, 6 hits, 1 error in this game. And just for to look, and another key stat from this Mets offense, 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position. 0 for 9. And now this is such a key stat. I'm going to go through it throughout this whole series. The Mets on Friday night were 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position. Pittsburgh Pirates, 6 for 17. That will be a common trend throughout this whole series. We then go to Saturday. You just hope that this would be bounce back, right? You just hope Friday night would be, all right, that was bad, but here's, but hey, get them tomorrow, right? And again, they got off to a nice little start, but hey, they got off to a good start. They actually scored in the first inning. They actually took advantage of runners in scoring position. Lindor got a double to start the game. And JuanSoto, again, continues his great month, continues his amazing month with an RBI single. And the Mets right off the bat are up 1-0. Paul Blackburn gets a clean 1-2-3 inning in the bottom of the first. He gets a clean inning in the first inning. And then we have a rain delay. Because, of course, there's a rain delay during this stretch of time. We get an hour and a half or so of rain delay. And that gives a Carlos Mendoza a decision to make. Now, actually, in the middle of this rain delay, the Mets were batting. Uh, this is again ended up being a key moment of the game. Tyrone Taylor, Brett Beatty all popped out. Torrens gets a base hit. Francisco Lindor walked. And then we get the rain delays, but the Mets have first and second, 2 outs off the rain delay. Mark Vientos, who really had a tough time at the plate in this series. I'm pretty sure he went 1 for 11 in this series. I think, and the one hit was like a blooper. It was like a little dribbler infield single. But he ends up striking out. And then, and then in the bottom of the second, Paul Blackburn goes out there. This was, I'm sure, not the easiest decision by Carlos Mendoza. I kind of agreed with him to keep pitching Paul Blackburn because you need innings out of your starting pitching. You can't really do the bullpen out like this again because your bullpen really needs the rest and your starting pitching really needs to give you innings. I didn't blame him for, uh, for putting in Blackburn in after an hour and a half rain delay, but it's clear as day it affected him. His velocity and his location was not where it was in the first inning. O'Neill Cruz gets a base hit. He then steals second on not even a pickoff throw by Paul Blackburn. Joey Bart gets an RBI single, tied at 1. Spencer Horwitz singles. Ke'Bryan Hayes singles, 2-1 Pirates. IKF singles. And just like that, Jose Buda was in the game. Paul Blackburn doesn't get an out. He gives up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight hits. He gave up 5 straight hits after the rain delay. You can blame it on the rain delay, but I personally look at it and say, Paul, I get it. It's an hour and a half. Not easy. You got to get some outs, dude. Mets needed some outs. They needed you to get some innings, and you couldn't get an out. Paul Blackburn now, so far this season, since coming back, 7.71 ERA. He went an inning, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 strikeouts. He has a 7.71 ERA. I said in the last show, how much more Paul Blackburn can you watch? How much more? You got Brandon Sproat. We'll talk a little bit about him. Jonah Tong. We'll definitely talk about him today. There was some news about him today. Nolan McLean. And you got these guys waiting in the wings, waiting to get an opportunity. How much more can you roll with Paul Blackburn out there? Paul Blackburn's next start, guys, you know what his next start is scheduled to be against? The Yankees on Friday night. You want to throw Paul Blackburn against the Yankees on Friday night at Citi Field? Okay. I'm sure Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger and those guys will be very happy to see Paul Blackburn out there, and they'll hit home runs. But anyway, Jose Budo goes out there, and he has to kind of do his best to limit the damage and limit the mess. He goes out there, gets a sac fly on Frazier, 3-1 Pirates. He then McCutchen then gets on and catches interference. He strikes out Brian Reynolds, and then he gets Nick Gonzalez to ground out. So, okay, Budo does a decent job. It's still 3-1. He does a decent job. The game remains scoreless for the next 2 innings. This is where the Mets pitching did step up here. This is where 3 guys in the Mets pitching, the Mets bullpen, did a good job. Jose Budo went 2 innings, a hit, a walk, and a strikeout. Brandon Waddell comes in. He goes 3 shutout innings, 3 strikeouts, only 1 hit allowed. And Reed Garrett goes 1 inning. And those 3 guys, Budo, Waddell, Reed Garrett, keep the Mets in the game. This was yet another game where it was competitive for the majority of the game. But all it took was 1 inning for it to completely evaporate into a blowout. Once again, this happens. But those 3 guys did a great job keeping the Mets in the game. In the top of the 5th, the Mets get a run back. I'm pretty sure I think this was by Brandon Nimmo. Let me check. Yep, Brandon Nimmo gets an RBI single. One PeteAlonso double. Brandon Nimmo drove him in on an RBI single. But then the Mets don't score again for the rest of the game. It's 3-2. They're up by again with those 3 guys keeping you in the game the way they did, and it's only a 1-run game. This is your opportunity to strike and take it to the Pirates and win the game here. Especially when three pitchers come out of the bullpen after Blackburn had nothing in the second inning. This is your chance to go out and win the game, take advantage of it, but the offense doesn't take advantage of it. And then Oscar Brazaban completely, again, struggles again. In the bottom of the eighth, he goes in, still a 3-2 game. The Mets offense again couldn't score for the next in the top of the sixth, seventh, or eighth. Couldn't score. Brazaban comes in for the bottom of the eighth, and his struggles continued. He gives up a hit to Nick Gonzalez. He walks Joey Bart. Again, walks have been a common thing for Brazaban. He walks Spencer Harwitz, and then he gives up an RBI single to Key Brian Hayes, and then they have to go to Colin Prochet. Brazaban, again, mentioned in the last show, but Brazaban had been so good for the first 2 months of the season, and this month he was atrocious. I think he had something for 12 or 13 ERA, 12 walks in his last several outings. They really need Brazaban to get back to what he was doing in the first 2 months. They really do. This bullpen really needs an effective Brazaban. Because if he's not effective, if he's struggling, it just adds more to this bullpen. So they really need him to bounce back in July. They really do. They need Brazaban. His struggles continued yesterday. Then they bring in Colin Prochet, who again, just more movements in and out of the pen, trying to find guys to get outs. And Prochet had 11.50 ERA in Washington. So again, you're not really expecting much. And look what happens. Gives up an RBI ground out to IKF. He walks Canario. He gives up an RBI single to Andrew McCutchen. RBI double to Brian Reynolds. And just like that, the game is over, folks. This was a 3-2 game going into the bottom of the eighth, and it becomes a 9-2 Pirates rout. And that's, it becomes a 9-2 Pirates rout. Once again, just like in Philadelphia and all these other games where the Mets, are close, but all it takes is one inning. And it all unravels in one inning. It all unravels in one inning. And all of a sudden the game becomes a blowout. That has been happening. That's a couple of times now that's happened. How does a game that's 3-2 in the bottom of the eighth becomes 9-2 like that? And that's been happening a lot for this team recently. It's been happening a lot for them. And let's read off the scoring position, shall we? Mets 2 for 8 on Saturday. Pirates 6 for 12. What else needs to be said? Sunday. So Saturday night they have the team meeting. You think, okay, Sunday, let's go. New game, coming back. Just had a team meeting. Let's go. Let's get a win. Let's salvage the series. Let's get a win. Coming back home. Well, the Pittsburgh Pirates had other ideas. And Frankie Montes, who had a great day, great outing in his debut, and his debut outing against the Braves. He gives up 5 runs in the bottom of the first. And that's it. Like, I think right there I think, again, if you're a Met fan, I think I said it on the State of the Mets show yesterday. If you're a Met fan, you watch that 5-run first inning for the Pirates, you said, yeah, that's the Mets are not winning this game. Frankie Montes comes in the bottom of the first in the second start. Walks McCutchen with 1 out, gives up a double to Brian Reynolds. He actually has a long 8-pitch at bat with Adam Frazier to begin the game. He gets Frazier on a fly out, but that's 8-pitch at bat to begin the game. He then walks McCutchen. And then after a 7-pitch at bat with Brian Reynolds, he gives up an RBI double to him. He gives up a double to him. Brett Beatty to Spencer Harwitz makes an incredible play, which saves 2 runs. And you think, okay, you got to make this count. So Beatty makes this great play, which saves 2 runs. And as soon as that play was made by Beatty, I said, you got to make it count now. You got to make that count. You got to get the last. Montez had thrown about 20 plus pitches in this inning in the bottom of the first, but you could not get down to the Pirates again. You could not get down to the Pirates again. You could not. You had to get the last out. You had to get out of the first inning with a scoreless game. You could not allow the Pirates to score after that play by Beatty, who made a diving play to get the second out. And then Ke'Bryan Hayes comes up, and he gets an RBI single to center field, scores 2 runs. It's 2-0 Pirates. Ke'Bryan Hayes, who had an incredible series. And then O'Neill Cruz does what O'Neill Cruz does. He hits a home run, 2-run homer, 4-0. Tommy Pham comes right back, makes it back to back. He hits a home run. It's only Tommy Pham's second home run of the season. But Tommy Pham comes up, he hits a home run, and it's 5-0 Pittsburgh. Again, you just knew right there, like, well, it's probably it. It's probably the game right there for the Mets. Next inning on the top of the second, McNeil gets a base hit with 1 out, but then Mark Vientos grounds to an inning-ending double play. And again, you just got that sense, like, oh, here we go, here we go again. Bottom of the second, Henry Davis gets a base hit. Adam Frazier gets a base hit. Andrew McCutchen, sac fly, scores Henry Davis. Frazier's base hit moved Davis to third. McCutchen sac fly, 6-0 Pirates. And Montez then kind of finds it. Like he actually kind of did through the next 2 innings. But again, it was, you're already down 6-0. Montez kind of found it in the next 2 innings. So hopefully he can carry that over. He finished the game with 4 innings, 7 hits, 6 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, and a walk. Gave him 2 home runs. The ERA is now 6. So he did find it in the next 2 innings. So hopefully he can carry those next 2 innings over to his next start. But still, those first 2 innings, that was it. That was it. That, first 2 innings, you're down 6-0 right off the bat. Hand the ball off to Richard Lovelady. The Mets resigned Lovelady, I believe, that same day. They resigned Lovelady to come back and pitch. He then goes in, and right off the bat, he gives up a home run to Brian Reynolds. 7-1. The Mets actually scored a run. Let's see. The Mets scored a run on. Where did they score? Where did they score? Oh, they scored. Oh, right. Luis Torrens hit a solo homer. That's right. Just going through here. That's right. Luis Torrens hit a home run. Torrens' second homer of the season. Although this one's more legit because Torrens' first home run came on a ball that went off the glove of the Miami Marlins outfielder and then over the fence. So, but yeah, Torrens, it's a home run. It's a solo homer. But Brian Reynolds and homers against Richard Lovelady. Tommy Pham gets another RBI single. That scores Ke'Bryan Hayes. It's 8-1. And then Daniel Nunez comes in. He gives up a 2-run homer to O'Neill Cruz. His second homer of the game. It's 10-1 Pirates. And the bottom of the 8th inning, Canario walks in a run. Canario walks in a run. The Mets actually did a pitching. The Mets actually put in Travis Jankowski in the pitch. They did the whole position pitcher thing. So Jankowski comes in to pitch. He gives up a walk to Canario. He gives up a sac fly to Harwitz. This was as ugly of a loss, especially after the team meeting, as the Mets have had all season long. And that says a lot considering they went 3-13 to finish the month, and they had bad losses in Philly, they had bad losses against the Rays, they had bad losses against Atlanta. The couple losses already against the Pirates was bad, but this was ugly. This was ugly. You had the team meeting. Everyone's aware that the team is struggling. Everyone's aware that they're not winning games. Everyone's aware of their performance as of late. And you come out and you're down 5-0, 6-0 right off the bat. The game was over after the first inning. So, yeah, this was bad. As bad of a loss the Mets have had all season. And to quote Danny Abriano of SNY, and I think he summed it up pretty well for this whole series. He said, the Mets just no showed. This is on a tweet from Danny Abriano. The Mets just no showed a 3-game series against one of the worst teams in baseball. That was one of the worst displays I've seen from a contending Mets team in over 3 decades watching. Um, I don't know if that was the worst from a contending Mets team, but boy, yeah, that's definitely up there. That's definitely up there. I don't know if it's the worst. I don't know if it's the worst of a contending Mets team, but yeah, that was bad. You're facing one of the worst teams in baseball, a team that could not score offensively. And oh, I almost forgot. Let's take a look at the Mets run. Let's take a look at the difference in runs and scoring position. The Pittsburgh Pirates on Sunday, 4 for 11. So not as great as the last two, but still 4 for 11. And the Mets 0 for 5. So the Mets in runners and scoring position in this series against the Pirates went, to recap, the Mets in runners and scoring position in this series went 0 for 9 on Friday, Saturday 2 for 8, Sunday 0 for 5. Meanwhile, the Pirates were scoring runs after runs, and they were doing well run scoring position. It's as bad of a series, and they got, like I said, they got blasted 30-4. Combined score of 30-4. Combined score of 30-4. And as bad of a series as the Mets have played all season long, and as embarrassing of a series the Mets have had in a while. And especially Sunday, when you had the team meeting and you knew everyone was aware of what was going on. Everyone was aware that it was time to step up. Everyone was aware, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso all spoke to the team. Everyone was aware. And to come out and play like that the way they did on Sunday, that's unacceptable, man. That's unacceptable. And to get blown out again, you gave up 3 straight games, 3 straight to the Pittsburgh Pirates, where they scored 9 runs or more. The Pittsburgh Pirates scored 9 runs or more in all 3 games. All 3 games, they scored 9 runs or more. All 3 games, they scored 9 runs or more. Meanwhile, in all 3 games, the Mets scored 1, 2, 1. The Mets in Pittsburgh didn't score more than 2 runs in any of the games in this series. Meanwhile, the Pirates scored 9 or more. The Mets are supposed to be a playoff team, folks. No. They're supposed to be a World Series team. I don't care what time of the year that is. It could have been April. That's unacceptable, man. It could have been April, first week of the season. That's unacceptable. And the Mets know that, and the owner knows that. And I said on the show yesterday, actually, we'll do a quick tweet from Steve Gelbs. Gelbs tweeted after the game from SNY. Steve Gelbs, he tweeted after the game on yesterday. It's hard to imagine a team needing an off day more than the Mets right now. Honestly, I don't really care about the off day today. I've seen a lot of people say, well, the Mets need an off day. Mets need an off day. No, the Mets need to go. I'll tell you what. In things like this, when you're struggling the way you are, I don't think an off day is what you need. I think what you need is to go back out there and play, get a win. Because an off day, okay, a day off is fine and all, but it doesn't matter if you don't go out there the next day and win. Do the Mets need a day off? Sure, but what they really need is to go out there tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, whatever, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever, is to go out there tomorrow and win a baseball game, to get your confidence up, to get yourself back into a groove. So that's what they need. They need a feeling of wins again. They need the feeling of getting on a winning path again. That's what they need. They don't need a day off. They need to go back on the field and get back into a winning formula again. Get back into their winning ways. But anyway, Steve Gelbs of SNY tweeted out yesterday after the game. It's hard to imagine a team needing an off day more than the Mets right now. After a 9-2 start to June, they finished the month 3-13, capped by a stunning sweep in Pittsburgh, outscored 30-4. The offense struggles are real, but lack of any strength in the starting pitching lately is hurting them. Yeah. And I said yesterday on the show, I said yesterday in the State of the Mets, that the owner knows The owner knows. The owner is taking note of this. Steve Cohen sees it. He knows it. And right on cue this morning, Steve Cohen tweets, tough stretch, no sugarcoating it. I didn't see this coming. I'm as frustrated as everybody else. Yeah, again, I said yesterday, you don't think he's not frustrated? You don't think he's not frustrated? Steve Cohen's the most frustrated person on the Mets right now. It ain't the players. It ain't Stearns. It ain't Mendoza. They're all frustrated, but not as frustrated as the boss. Not as frustrated as Steve. Not as frustrated as him. But to continue his tweet, we will get through this period. Our injured pitching will come back over the next few weeks. It is unlikely the team's hitting a run score. Okay, this is where I got to talk. This is where I got to look at Steve Cohen and say something. But he says it is unlikely the team's hitting a run scoring position will continue at this week pace. Keep the faith. Let's talk about that, Steve, shall we? Let's talk about that, Steve. It is unlikely the team's hitting a run scoring position will continue at this week pace. Steve, it's been 3 months. Steve, it's been 3 months, buddy. It's been 3 months, boss. It's been 3 months. You're hitting a run scoring position is what it is right now. It is what it is. He wrote, it is unlikely the team's hitting run scoring position. He says it is unlikely the team's hitting run scoring position will continue at this week pace. It has been 3 months, buddy. It has been 3 months, man. 3 months. You are what you are at this point. You are what you are. And right now, the New York Mets, with runners in scoring position, are one of the worst teams in all of baseball with runners in scoring position. They're one of the worst teams in all of baseball. They're one of the worst teams in all of baseball runners in scoring position. It's been 3 months, Steve. 3 months. So I don't think a magic, all of a sudden, things are going to change. I don't think unless there's a drastic change in the coaching or a drastic change in hitting approach, unless there's a drastic change in coaching, unless there's a drastic change in the hitting approach and the timely hitting, it's not changing. There won't be no magic wand. When he says unlikely the team's hitting the run score position will continue at this pace. I don't know what else to say, Steve. It's nothing is going to change unless the team's hitting approach changes, unless there is a change of hitting coach and there is a new voice in there. It's been 3 months. We gave it 1 month. We gave it 1 month. I gave it 1 month. And I said, all right, it's just 1 month. Let's see. Then May happened. And it was the same story. Then June now happened. It's the same story. It ain't getting any better, Steve. This team is one of the worst teams in baseball running the scoring position. They're the only team. They're right there with the Chicago White Sox in terms of worst teams in all baseball running the scoring position. So I don't think this is a quick fix. And that brings to Andy Martino's report from yesterday. That brings us to Andy Martino's report from yesterday when it comes to the coaching. He says, despite the team's skid, the Mets officials continue to believe in the coaching staff. Okay. Despite the Mets' recent skid, team officials continue to believe in the coaching staff. He writes, despite the Mets' recent slump, which now includes a weekend mauling in Pittsburgh of all places, team officials continue to believe in the Major League coaching staff. It is natural an off day follows a brutal weekend for fans and pundits to speculate that heads will roll. In this case, it won't be worth your time to go down that road. The offense is underperformed, but rarely does a change in hitting coaches turn around a struggling lineup. MLB hitters as grown men, no longer in a player development program. Many have their own private hitting instructors, in addition to the Mets' Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. High-end agencies provide hitting data and feedback. The team's succession and failures rarely hinge on the staff instructors employed by that club. Here's the thing. I understand hitters have their own private instructors. Heck, there was an article just a few weeks ago or a month ago that said, I think a month ago, last month, that said PeteAlonso has his own private hitting instructor. He has his own guy that he goes to. He has his own guy. But here's the thing: you're a team with World Series aspirations. You're a team with World Series aspirations. At some point, something's got to change. At some point, something's got to change. At some point, it's got to change. And I don't know if firing Barnes or Chavez will fix everything. Well, I will say Eric Chavez again should get off Instagram and stop talking beef with the fans, but I digress. So I don't know what else to say, but I don't know what changes. I don't know what other changes, when you're in a situation like this, sometimes, yeah, coaches got to go. Sometimes you just got to say, sorry, Eric, sorry, Barnes. We got to make a little change here. We got to get a new voice in here. Sometimes that has to happen. It's just sports. That's just the nature of sports. That's just sports. You know, I don't know if it'll change everything. I don't know if all of a sudden the Mets will become the greatest team in run scoring position ever. That requires a lot, but at some point, and especially now that Steve Cohen has tweeted about it, and he's noticed, and he has seen something, and he is aware of it. That makes you think, okay, maybe a change doesn't happen right now, but Steve is aware of it now, and if he wants, and so if things don't turn around, things don't change quickly, then a change might happen. And I understand that everyone's got their own hitting coaches and hitting instructors, but at some point, there needs to be a change in tone, a change in strategy, a change in approach at the plate in order to just. I don't blame Hefner, by the way. Pitching stuff, I don't blame Hefner for. He's got injuries all over the place, mixing and matching. I don't really blame Hefner what's going on with the pitching. But there's no excuse with the hitting. Everyone's healthy, aside from Jesse Winker and Alvarez being set down, but the majority of the offense is there. Winker is still rehabbing and he's on his way back. Alvarez has been set down, but aside from that, the majority of the offense is still there. So there's no real excuse there. Jeremy Hefner has at least got an excuse. Jeremy Hefner at least has an excuse. There's no excuse for Chavez and Barnes. There's no excuse. There's no excuse with Chavez and Barnes. There's no excuse. So I don't know what's going to. So again, we'll see what happens. I think a lot depends on. I think a lot depends on the next week, this upcoming week of games, maybe a little bit of next week. I think it all depends on what happens. If they don't start winning games this week and they continue this slide against, by the way, against good contending teams, by the way, Milwaukee and the Yankees, you could see a change or so made. You could see a new voice be brought in. But again, we'll have to find out and see. A little bit of Mets minor league news around the player development. Again, talking about Brandon Sproat, he came off a good outing, 6 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, and 2 hits. But the big story out of the Mets minor league system was the All-Star Futures game. Carson Benj and Jonah Tong will represent the Mets at the Futures game during the All-Star week in Atlanta. So that'll be pretty cool. That'll be cool to see Jonah Tong go out there in the Futures game and Carson Benj with his team like a lot. They're both in Double A Binghamton. So that'll be really cool to see them in the Futures game. Who knows? Maybe Jonah Tong could be in the major leagues at some point this season. Because again, like I said before earlier in the show, they really could use him. Maybe signing a guy, calling a guy from Double A is not something the Mets really. I don't think it might not be something the Mets want to do, but at some point you might have to make a decision because again, they got all these pitching changes, they got all these pitching things, but we'll see. But Jonah Tong will be in the Futures game if you all want to watch it. I'll be watching it because I love the Futures game and I love All-Star Weekend. I love the All-Star game. I love the All-Star Week. So I'll be watching the Futures game. I'll watch the Home Run Derby, and yes, I will pull for PeteAlonso. Yes, I will hope that PeteAlonso continues to be in the All-Star game. I'm one of the people that like seeing Pete in the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby. I'm sorry, but actually, there's also the finalists for the All-Star game, the All-Star break, or the All-Star game, excuse me. the finalists were named. The Lindor, Soto, and Alonso are all finalists for the All-Star game as they enter the I think All-Star finalists, Lindor, Alonso, and Soto. So I'll tell you, Edwin Diaz, I think. I tell you, Edwin Diaz, I think deserves to have whole All-Star game. Should be in the All-Star game. Edwin Diaz is having, Soto. Soto is now getting it because of his great June. All right, because he was so good in the month of June. I don't know if they would have done this All-Star stuff, All-Star finals voting in May. I don't know if Soto would have gotten in, but he's had such a good month of June that's now pulling his weight right now to get in. That's now playing a factor in him getting into the All-Star game. Lindor has been really good overall, but as of late, he's really, really struggled, and they need him to step up. And Pete, of course, has had a monster year virtually most of the season, although, like I said, as of late, he's been striking out a little bit too much. But in terms of Mets, who I think should be in the All-Star game, aside from those three, Soto, Alonso, Lindor, I think the fourth guy should really be Edwin Diaz. I think the fourth guy should really be Edwin Diaz. You could have made a case for Griffin Canning, I think, but of course Canning's now hurt. But Edwin Diaz, I think, deserves to be it. Edwin Diaz is having a very good year. He's having a very good year. He's just not getting the ball as of late, but he's having a very good year, Edwin Diaz. I think Diaz should get real consideration for the All-Star game as we get closer to the All-Star game. But let's talk about the series with the Milwaukee Brewers. The Milwaukee Brewers come into this series red hot. They are one of the best teams in all of baseball since around mid-May. And I mentioned in the last show, they're throwing in against the Mets. They're throwing in Freddie Peralta, 8-4 with a 2.90 ERA. Freddie Peralta takes the mound on Tuesday night, July 1st. Well, takes the mound tomorrow night at 7:10 p.m. The Mets will throw in Clay Holmes. To talk about Clay Holmes for a second, I know they've been limiting his innings, but boy, you and his pitcher, and they've been watching his pitch counts of late. But boy, they really need Clay Holmes to pitch to give him something. They really, I think, need to start pushing Clay Holmes again because they need it now. They really need it. So if Clay Holmes can give you 6, 7, push it, man. Push it. Don't just take him out after 5 innings and 70-something pitches. If he's had 70 pitches after 5 innings, throw him in there for the 6th because you really need him now to give you some innings. I know it might be tough, but you got to tell Clay, dude, you got to pull through. You got to pull for, or at least pull for us. Get another inning or two. I know it's tough. I know it might be tough, and it's tough for him because he's a reliever as a starter now. But you got to tell him, hey, man, if he's throwing 70 pitches after the 5th inning or so, push through the 6th. Get to the 6th inning first because, boy, we need the innings right now. So be interested to see what the Mets handle with Clay Holmes if they get to that part of the game. And then the next day, Wednesday night, Blake Tidwell pitches for the New York Mets, and he faces Jacob Misiorowski, 3-0 with a 1 point, who was taking the league by storm in his first couple of starts. He throws 102, by the way. He reminds you of another Jacob, DeGrom. 3-0, 1.13 ERA, 16 innings of work, 19 strikeouts, a 0.63 whip. He actually outdueled and beat Paul Skeens in his last outing against the Pirates. This kid's impressive. This kid is really good and really impressive. I watched him a couple of times. I watched him in the game against the Pirates when he faced Paul Skeens. This kid's good. This kid's good. I don't know how the Mets offense will handle him on Wednesday night, but that kid's good. That kid is very good. He is still a rookie. He's still a young pup. I think this will only be his 4th or 5th start of his career. So he's still a young pup. But boy, this kid's good. This kid can pitch. And then Thursday night, Mets, it'll be a battle of lefties. David Pearson looks to bounce back after back-to-back bad outings against former Met Jose Quintana, who is having a very good year for the Brewers, 6-2 with a 3.30 ERA. And boy, could the Mets use him right about now. I made the case. I made the case during the offseason. I said, Quintana they really could use Quintana back. I really liked what I saw from Quintana. He had some inconsistencies last year, but August, September, he found it. August, September, and in the playoffs, he found it. He was terrific down the stretch in August, September, and into the playoffs. He was fantastic in Game 3 in the division in the wild card round against the Brewers. I think he even pitched Game 5 or Game 4 I think he pitched Game 4 against the Phillies, and he was fantastic that day. Jose Quintana, I think is a guy the Mets really, I think, should have resigned in the offseason. I understand they brought in Canning, they brought in Holmes, and they've overall been good. And obviously, stinks that it stinks now that Canning's hurt. They were having Senga come back. Obviously, Manaea was a big priority for them, and obviously Manaea, you definitely wanted to resign, and they did. It's just unfortunate they haven't gotten an inning out of him yet. He's still hurt trying to come back. And speaking of Sean Manaea, he threw a bullpen, I believe, or yeah, threw a bullpen I think yesterday or played catch yesterday, and he's still on track to make his rehab outing, which I believe is either tomorrow or Wednesday. I want to say his rehab outing will be either tomorrow or Wednesday. I'll check back with that in a second. But Jose Quintana was a guy I really thought the Mets should have made a more of an effort to resign, though. Savvy veteran. He's always on the field. Uh, he's always on the field. Good lefty. I thought he did some really good things last year. Like I said, he got hot down the stretch. He was really good. I think he was consistent. I think the Mets should have really seriously considered bringing him back to be that back end of the guy starter. And, look at the injuries now. Again, it's unfortunate. It stinks. It's unfortunate, it stinks, but it just, but you really could have used him right now. You really could have used Quintana right about now. I know it might be hindsight. That might be hindsight 55th, 20. That might be hindsight talking right now. That might be a bit of hindsight talking right now, considering where the Mets pitching is right now. So that admittedly, that might be a bit of hindsight. But you look at it, they really could use him. And Quintana's having another good year for the Brewers, so good for him. But that is the series between the Mets and the Brewers. This is a key series, man. And the Brewers are not making it easy. Peralta, Mazeroski, their young phenom, and now Quintana. You're throwing in Holmes, Tidwell, and you're throwing in Holmes, Tidwell, and Peterson. You've got to try to win this series. And that falls so much, in my opinion, on your offense. It's tough. Peralta's good. Mazeroski's good. Quintana's good. It's tough, but your offense has got to step up, and they've got to get up early in the game, score some runs, put your pitching in a good spot, and then get to the bullpen and get that ball to Edwin Diaz and let him do his thing in the ninth inning with a lead. The Mets need this series. They really need this series, man. They really need it because you don't want to come into the Yankee series in the Subway Series, the rematch after that whole thing that happened a month ago, at Yankee Stadium with JuanSoto and the fans, and it was like a playoff atmosphere. You don't want to come into that series reeling and losing another series to Milwaukee, whether it's 2-3 or sweep. You want to get back on track, use this day off you have today, come back tomorrow, get a win, and get back on track and take that series and get just a little bit of momentum going into that series with the Yankees. So you really need that. This is a series the Mets really need. They got to win it. They got to have it. You've got to get back on track, man, because the Yankees are coming to town and, you don't want to lose another series to them. So we'll see what happens this week, but the Mets really need to get back on track, get back on board, pitch better, and hit better because they really need to hit better. They really need to hit better. That is, like I said yesterday, the easiest fix is for them to hit better. That is the only true fix they have right now. That is to hit better. They got to get their best lineup out there, their best 9 guys out there in the lineup, and hit. And put their pitching in a good spot each and every single game from here on out. And go get wins. And like I said, hit better, should lead to pitching better, get the ball to Diaz, and try to do what you can to close the game out. That's all. But they need this series. They got to win this series against Milwaukee. They got to win the series against the Brewers. They've got to. They've got to. They got to. They got to. I mentioned Manaea, and actually, we'll do another update on the other southpaw in the minor leagues, Brooks Raley. Yes, remember him? Yeah, we have not talked about Brooks Raley so far on MazzaOnMets, but yeah, Brooks Raley was re-signed by the Mets about a couple months ago, but he was coming off surgery. And he's been rehabbing. He's pitched really well in rehab. All right, hey, we talked about the rehab outings and Frankie Montez. Well, it's been the opposite for Brooks Raley. Raley has pitched really well in his rehab outings, but he's still about a couple. He still seems like he'll be back before after the All-Star break. So he's still a bit of a weeks away. You know, It looks like he's still about a couple some weeks away, but he's a guy that could use in that bullpen. Especially a lefty specials with no AJ Minter. With AJ Minter's injury, they could use and with them rotating all these lefties from Waddell, who's pitched well. I actually like Brandon Waddell a lot. From Castillo to Colin Prochet to Richard Lovelady, they need a lefty in that bullpen, a reliable lefty in that bullpen. Brooks Raley was pretty good for them for a couple of years. He's back and healthy. He's pitching really well in rehab. The sooner they get him back, the better, because they could really use him in the middle of that bullpen as a lefty specials. They really could. So, but Brooks Raley's rehab was continuing. Carlos Mendoza gave up some updates on that yesterday before the game against the Pirates. Carlos Mendoza said, actually Manaea, who has been on the injured list since late March, had a setback in his left elbow and played catch earlier this week. He played catch earlier this week. He actually does not yet. So excuse me. I correct myself there. Excuse me. According to Carlos Mendoza, Manaea does not yet have a rehab start in mind. All right, it does not yet have a next rehab start in mind. So he threw his bullpen yesterday, back in New York, and then Mendoza said we'll see where he's at. So yeah, no bullpen. So it looks like there's not going to be a rehab assignment for Manaea this week. I don't know. Again, things seem to be a bit in flux now for Sean Manaea. So um, Mendoza continued. We've got to, especially with what he's dealing with now. Again, bullpen Sunday. We've got to wait and see how he responds, and we'll make that decision. Brooks Raley set the pitch. He pitched in Double A Binghamton Saturday. Or excuse me, he set the pitch this upcoming Saturday against the. Or I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He pitched this past Saturday against the Red Sox affiliate. Mendoza said, "We'll see what's next after that." Obviously, he's got to go to AAA at some point. I think we're going to see 1+ inning out of him. So we started that process, finishing an inning and then going back out for another one. I think that's happening Saturday, which is what did happen. I think it's more likely, Mendoza said about Raley, after the All-Star break, because he's coming back from Tommy John surgery. Raley started his rehab assignment on June 17th with Port St. Lucie before being transferred over to Binghamton. So a little correction there. Looks like Sean Manaea is not going to be having a rehab start this week. Not again, they were hoping he would still have his rehab start this week, but now it looks like that might not be the case. He had his bullpen yesterday, so I guess we'll find out more tomorrow when the Mets get back out there and we hear from Mendoza before the game. I guess we'll hear more about tomorrow about Sean Manaea's status, but we'll see what happens, because again, they need Manaea out there and they need Brooks Raley out there. So the sooner they get those two guys back, the better. Raley and Manaea are definitely needed in that starting rotation with Manaea, and they definitely need in that bullpen with Brooks Raley. So I think that so I think that'll be it for today's show on MazzaOnMets. Yeah, I think that'll be it for today's show on MazzaOnMets. Tomorrow we'll have our debut show of MazzaOnJets. We're going to talk about the New York Jets. We'll talk a bit about their offseason. We'll talk a bit about actually, you know what? Before we wrap up, let's take a bit of the out of town scoreboard today. Let's take a look about what's going on. Especially in the National League East. I believe the Phillies are currently playing right now. The Boston Red Sox are up 7-0 on the Cincinnati Reds. They're in the third inning. Yankees and Blue Jays scoreless. Philadelphia Phillies, they got back Bryce Harper today. They're up 3-0 on the San Diego Padres going into the fifth inning. So if the Phillies, Zach Wheeler's pitching. So if they hold on and win that game, the Mets will go into tomorrow 2 games back of the Philadelphia Phillies. The A's lead the Rays 3-0. Cardinals and Pirates are scoreless. They just started their game. Orioles and Rangers are just starting up. Royals and Mariners are later tonight. Giants and D-backs later tonight. So around the National League East, the only team right now playing is the Philadelphia Phillies, and they're up 3-0 over the San Diego Padres, heading to the top of the fifth. Zach Wheeler is pitching in that game. So far in that game, Zach Wheeler is 4 innings and 5 strikeouts already through 4 innings of work. So the Phillies, as they head to the top of the fifth, they're up 3-0. If they hold on and win that game, if they beat the Padres today and they win that game, the Mets will be 2 games back for the Philadelphia Phillies going into action tomorrow. So, but again, tomorrow, MazzaOnJets will be the debut episode of MazzaOnJets. We'll talk all things Jets and talk about their offseason, the signings of Justin Fields, their quarterback situation, the new head coach, new regime, new GM. Well, if we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers, to be fair, I don't know what's left to talk about with Aaron Rodgers. I should probably save this for tomorrow. You know, I should probably save this for tomorrow. I don't know what's left to talk about Aaron Rodgers, to be fair. He's not a Jet no more. He's with the Steelers. That's that. But we'll talk more about the Jets training camp and their battles in training camp, offensive line. We'll talk about the wide receivers and what to expect from this offense if they're in Glenn. What to expect from this offense if they're in Glenn now on board. And my prediction, my way too early. It's July, so it's not too early, but early prediction for the New York Jets in the 2025 season. Again, I think some of you will be a bit surprised where I have the Jets are this season. I think some of you will be a bit surprised. I don't have them in the playoffs. Don't spoil it there. I do not have them in the playoffs. Yes, you will have to wait another season to see the Jets in the playoffs, but I do think this season could see some good things. So that's a teeny spoil. So I think the Jets. You'll hear my opinion on where I think the Jets will be at the end of the season. Uh, so we'll see. We'll talk about that. We'll do Mazza on Jets tomorrow, to the debut episode, and I'm looking for, because I did mention this, to do a wrestling podcast, do a wrestling show. We might be talking a little wrestling. I did say we will do some wrestling every now and then. And I'm hoping for Saturday or Sunday to get my first wrestling show in. We'll talk a little Raw, we'll talk a little SmackDown, pay-per-views, of course. We got Evolution coming up, Night of Champions just happened, AEW, Dynamite, we'll talk about Dynamite, maybe even talk a little bit about TNA. Dynamite, of course, has All In coming up soon. AEW's got All In coming up soon. So Saturday, Sunday, we might be looking in for a little bit of my wrestling podcast, a little wrestling show. Because again, I want to squeeze in some wrestling every now and then between the Mets, the Ravens, and the Jets. I do want to next week, I'll come back with Mazza on Ravens. Definitely a lot to get into with the Ravens, of course, with the series of Steeler moves that happened today. The Steelers acquired Jalen Ramsey, they acquired Jonnu Smith. So there's definitely a lot to get into around the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens and as they prepare for training camp. So we'll preview Jets training camp tomorrow. Next week, we'll preview Ravens training camp on Mazza on Ravens. And of course, Friday, as usual, we'll be back for more MazzaOnMets, recapping the series with the Milwaukee Brewers and previewing Subway Series Round 2. That's right. It's the Mets and the Yankees this weekend on 4th of July. Hey, that can't get any better. Mets, Yankees, Subway Series, Round 2, Citi Field, Queens, and it's July 4th weekend. Hey, can't get any better than that. Can't get more New York than that. So that should be a lot of fun. But that being said, that will do it for this edition, of MazzaOnMets. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for and please give this video a like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much again for tuning in. This has been Evan Mazza for MazzaOnMets. We will see you again tomorrow for MazzaOnJets and Friday again for MazzaOnMets. Thank you very much for watching. Have yourselves a great day, and let's go Mets.